This episode is about minutes 96 through 100 of Solo: A Star Wars Story, which starts with our crew making a happy landing on Savareen and ends with them facing off with a mask and fist nest. Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Xanthe Tan, but you can call me Xanthe, and today it's all about minutes 96 through 100 of Solo: A Star Wars Story. I am really excited to have John Hoey from Resistance Broadcast after just having his co-host Lacey Gillerin on the show a couple episodes ago. Hello, John.
Hi, Xanthe. Thank you so much for having me. Big shoes to follow with Lacey, of course, so hopefully I hold up to her standards, because as I understand it, she had a blast on your show, so I look forward to being here, so thank you very much for having me.
Of course. As one of the co-creators of the Make Solo 2 Happen hashtag movement. Oh, are you wearing the shirt? You're wearing the shirt.
I'm wearing one of the shirts. I had to do
it. Nice. Oh, that's awesome. I just had to have you on, of course. Since you are passionate about the movie Solo.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love it very, very much. And it's a very rewatchable film for me. And, I love every Star Wars movie in varying degrees. But for some reason, Solo, when I want to just put a movie on late at night after the kids are bed and I want to unwind and watch a Star Wars movie, I often draw myself to a movie like Solo. It makes me feel good. It's an adventure story, and it's very rewatchable in my opinion.
Does it feel... Oh, that's interesting, because I think a lot of us have like our favorite Star Wars movie, or one that we maybe think is quote unquote the best. I don't really, but I know a lot of people do. And then there's the one that I like. Like, I like to judge Star Wars movies, and I know that my friend Ender from Auric Fonts also does this in terms of what do I feel like watching right now. And sometimes that's a very different like answer than what we would maybe choose as what we think is objectively the best. But
yeah, I agree.
But I also think there's just more. Those two things are probably not as different as we think they are. It might be kind of an artificial separation sometimes as well.
I agree. Yeah, I'm with you on the mood thing. Sometimes I want to get like deep with story and character relations and stuff like that, and I'll draw myself more to my favorite movie, Empire Strikes Back, or maybe even TLJ, or Rogue One. And then sometimes I want the adventures, so I go with A New Hope or Solo. So I or Phantom Menace. So I agree with you. A lot of it is dictated based on mood. It's sort of like a mood ring, and then you reach and find out the one that's the one that's hitting you at that right time is your favorite movie in that moment.
100%. So how do you feel about minutes 96 through 100 in the context of Solo? Like all that's happening here. We're getting on Savareen, and we haven't met Enfys Nest yet, or at least not unmasked.
Right. It's an interesting series because you're coming off of one of the most, especially if you look at it from a perspective of a first watch. I remember being in the theater, and you're coming off of one of the most talked about stories from A New Hope, the Kessel Run, and you're like, oh, are they going to pull this off? Like, because this is something that's been known for decades, and they have to really nail this scene, or people are going to be really upset because this is the thing Han Solo always brags about. And they crushed it. And the music by John Powell with John Williams themes woven in from Empire, including Han's theme, all that, the main Star Wars theme. We're coming out of that. So it's like at the end of a roller coaster, and you're like, your adrenaline's still going, but the car stopped. And that's how it feels when the Falcon lands. So I like that that's what we're talking about here, because it's not a scene I feel like people talk about often, because the Kessel Run's right before it.
I love that you said that, because that was one of the points that I wanted to make, was like how the contrast between the end of the Kessel Run music and just the silence, like the relative silence, at least the musical silence, upon landing on Savareen. It's like that kind of like awkward, like, I don't know. And the fact, like, we'll take a listen to it in a second, but the fact that the Kessel Run music ends so overtly euphoric, like,
yes,
it just emphasizes that.
Yeah, it's like they took two parts of the Star Wars main theme as they're shooting out of the Maelstrom on a higher register, which always in me evokes like a more chipper, optimistic feeling. So
Yeah, that's so true. Let's take a listen to how we get into that. All right. Right. So we just had like the end of the main theme. Now we have the Rebel fanfare,
yep.
and now Savareen. We're hearing Savareen.
Now just a rusty little wind thing.
Yeah. And there's more. Let's see. So this is when we see the air traffic controller listening to Han's message.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, is that the first time Han Solo ever says Millennium Falcon?
Oh, you've caught me off guard. I don't actually. Maybe.
It's funny because I love this movie so much, and I have to study it for trivia stuff, and I was doing these minutes, and I love that it's this 5-minute thing because then I could really focus on it. And when I hear him say Millennium, he says Falcon, kind of like how Han says Falcon in A New Hope. And I'm like, I don't know that he ever says it until this moment.
Yeah, I don't remember, but you're one of those trivia people, huh?
I try to anyway.
The stuff that comes up in trivia is some of the most random things where it's like, you would have thought that I would have known this, but somehow when you cut the question like that, it's suddenly I'm like, need my notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I mean, it's possible that it is. If you were to tell me that, I would believe you. But here, the cutting between is kind of there's a lot of like cutting between two contrasting sound worlds happening in this set of minutes, and their whole landing is one of them, where we see like where they are is that one set of music. It's like very upbeat. It's very dangerous. It's very we need to make a crash landing, and the sound design, of course, is all about that too. And then we just have the air traffic, the Savareen, which is like so quiet and so just like you can tell they haven't had a visitor in quite some time.
Right. It's the Western, like you're going to this new town and all the doors are shut. There's no one out in the street, and you just see like one of those dust things. I forget what they call it, but it's blowing past the camera, and that's what this is. This is like, what is this place? It's not giving me any signal, no warmth, no cold. I don't know what it is. And I think I like that they vacuumed out the sound there, except for the wind spinning, to like give it that sort of ominous, like we don't know what this place is going to give us right now feeling.
Totally, it's like that Savareen tumbleweed effect.
Tumbleweed. How did I forget what a tumbleweed is? Unbelievable. Thank you.
Anytime. So let's listen to the continuation of their landing from where we picked up. That's a little portion of Han's.
Yes.
And now that
doesn't that feel
just the way it
like,
ends right there?
Yeah, like that's almost very Star Warsy, like something they'd play right before the credits come up at the end of a Star Wars movie.
Right. It's a very
that lift, that little brum.
Yeah. It's what I call a button ending, where it's not like a fade out into another cue. It's like here's the end of the piece. Like it's a grand finish. It's a final, it's a final moment, and it's quite like I find. Well, let's listen to it one more. Let's listen to it one more time to hear that just how it's rare to have a final moment like this in a film, especially in a Star Wars film. And it's not subtle. It's like you can hear the harps going like up. You can tell the conductor goes like and stop. Like
yes, and it's almost like in a play or something, like the Millennium Falcon's like taking a bow, and it's like the music ends or something. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. For this reason, I tend to feel that, like in general in Solo, I feel like the way that the music is handled, especially in transitions, sometimes makes me feel like it's a little bit of a joke. Like that feels like a subtle, like it feels fun. Like to me, it feels humorous to end like that. And then it's kind of awkward. We're on Savareen and it's time for Han and Lando to just like have their conversation. And it's like, what was this like you said, roller coaster that came before? Now's the aftermath, where we just kind of listen to the
Right.
wind. Um, and the sounds of Savareen is like one of my favorite sound parts of the film.
It is desolate, and again, it gives you it doesn't give you any indication of, or at least the audience, because that's, the music is, supposed to help tell the story. It leaves us guessing, what they're in for right now, because sometimes, especially in horror movies and things like that, music can give away what's about to happen. If there's that slow build, or they do the fake out, or they do the jump scares or whatever. And in this one, it's almost like John Powell's like, nope, let's vacuum that out. And maybe he did that in conjunction with Ron Howard and how they wanted to tell this part of the story. But in watching it, even knowing what's about to happen, you still get that feeling like, yeah, I'm still not sure about this place, and it's because there's no music to warm things over or make it feel cold or whatever.
That's such a great point. I think it also falls very in line with sort of original Star Wars. And I will say, like right before this, when we had the whole Ma situation, there is a lot of that jump scare, horror cue sounding music. So we just had like several
Right.
minutes of that type of music, and now it's like, but now you're on your own. Like before, there were all these vibes to show us that the monster is here, and it was yeah. Now it's like almost giving us space to breathe. Also keeping in mind that
Yeah.
the minutes that came before this were like the whole reminiscence therapy section and the whole like the Ma into the Ma, which are both very like action packed for different reasons. It's like very overstimulating, so it's like we kind of need a break now.
Hmm. I do like that. That's a good point too. That it is sort of like, let's give the audience a breather here. I think that's spot on, because if you overload people too much, they're going to get overwhelmed and then just stop focusing on what needs to be focused on. So I think you have a really good point there.
Totally. And also, this reminds me of is the beginning of A New Hope, or beginning ish. The first time that we land on Tatooine, or not land, but I mean, yeah, the first time the droids are, land on Tatooine, and
Hmm.
we also the first several minutes on Tatooine, we also do not have any music, and we eventually have music, and it comes in, like the Jawa stuff, like the kind of not heavy-handed music, but music enters in. It's what people consider sort of the stuff that sounds like Stravinsky's Rite of Spring and whatever. But it's easy to forget that the first few minutes is just R2 and 3PO, just like in this big desert, like on the
Right.
Dune Sea, and talking about like their 3PO's joints, like and frozen joints and everything. And so that also is like, if that's the very first Star Wars that people watch, if you go in release order, and the first establishing of like of a planet terrain, it also has no music. So it really leaves the audience to discover
So
with the
yeah.
characters what they're getting into. Like Tatooine is neutral when we first land. We don't know. And same with Savareen.
Right. No, that's a great parallel. I didn't even think about that, because yeah, that is a very barren sort of segment of A New Hope. Um, as you're just being introduced into this story. Like, yeah, that's a great parallel.
We are getting acclimated, and through the sound design is helping tell the story here. Um, and just the way that these minutes unfold, I feel tells a lot, like especially later when they're walking, kind of walking around the village, seeing how dilapidated it is. Like you really are hearing
Hmm.
how squeaky stuff things are, and just you see people. Um, yeah.
It's and I don't know if it's deliberate or not. I always lean on giving directors and storytellers credit more than coincidence. And they're emphasizing the wind here quite a bit in two different, not wind chimes, but you're going to help me out with that term too. Whatever that thing that tells you which direction the wind's blowing. Anyway, on two different devices, and the characters' hairs are blowing. They're sort of like moving around, like they're getting dust in their eyes and stuff. It's an unsettling environment. And, it's also unpredictable. Like when you're out in the wind, like it's just a very unsettling, unpredictable feeling. You don't know, is the tree going to fall down? Is it going to start raining? Is it going to be thundering lightning? It's just the environment that they created here, in addition to pulling the music out, is just this uncertain, unpredictable environment.
Totally. And when it comes to the wind, that is like wind sound like that would never just be an accident. Definitely not an accident. In fact, listeners, if you go back to the first season of this show, which was covering The Last Jedi, I think in episode 10, Justin Leo Kennedy was the guest, and we talked all about like the creation, like wind sounds, and just like what goes into, all that can go into creating wind sounds, because there's also a lot of wind on Octo when Rey is undergoing training with Luke. And so that episode is called Colors of the Wind, and we talk about like filtering white noise to make different kinds of wind, and like changing the filters and everything. So I would say here, definitely like the wind is for sure on purpose. It has to be.
And we were covering the production of Solo on Star Wars Newsnet like constantly, and like the locations they're shooting on and stuff like that. And where they filmed for Savareen was Fuerteventura, and it's known to be quite a windy island, as most islands are. So it could have been, well, this is a windy location. We did scout for it. Did we scout for it because we wanted wind, or does it just happen to be windy and we're just going to work that into this? So either way, I think it does a great job in what they're trying to tell in this part of the story.
It seems like another Porg scenario where they're like, well, there's puffins on this island, so we're going to make it a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in order to get wind like that consistent, like, I don't know exactly how the wind was captured here, though I would like to find out. So if someone listening knows how I can find that out, let me know. Because wind or sounds in general can be captured in so many different ways. Like one could be like literally recording the sound. Like you could record the wind, and that would be like an old school way that would be like how Ben Burt used to do everything, like recording some sounds, mixing them together. But nowadays, I would say that's for sure not the only way people do things. Like a lot of it is just created, through the computer and through, and so there could have been, in my headcanon right now, in my meta headcanon, I don't know. I'm guessing there's like, maybe they recorded on location wind, but also probably amplified it or like fortified it with sort of computer generated sounds, so they could have more control over the wind and not just have whatever this location was giving them. But I don't know. But yeah, the wind is definitely a big thing. We hear the wind, and then we see the evidence of the wind via things flapping, and that I think it's called a weather vane or like a wind vane or something.
Right.
Something
yeah,
like
I think you're right. Yeah.
Spinning.
And Chewie's hair is just like out of control.
Oh, yeah. It's flapping. Yeah. So moving on from here, Lando and before that we they are unloading or offloading the coaxium, and so the coaxium has a lot of sort of squeaky noises to it, and we hear the canisters we hear a lot of metallic sounds.
Very metallic.
Yeah, and shout out to the air traffic controller whose tongue has been cut out by Crimson Dawn. And according to Wikipedia, what does it say about him? It says his name is Dowar Reparidat. His tongue was cut out by the Crimson Dawn Syndicate when he and the other villagers stood up to them. However, he was still able to maintain an effective silent communications network.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It also says,
I did not know that.
From the visual guide, he worked as an air traffic controller, which is the easiest job of the village. So he has enough time for dreaming, which is hilarious because in real life, air traffic controller Not the easiest job.
I would not think so. Yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool. I did not know that fact. That's interesting.
Um, so then we have Han and Lando's scene. It's still no music here. What do you think of this scene, or of Lando, or of their relationship?
I mean, I like the nod to the I know thing, and this version is I hate you. I like how Han knows that Lando's irritated, so he's like, I'm just gonna irritate him a little more. So he puts his arm around him, and I just feel like their dichotomy is charming in that I think Lando does like Han, but he doesn't want to necessarily show it yet, and it's one of those things. And I think they did a good job of nailing the early part of the Lando and Han relationship, because it wasn't too far off from what I thought it would be. And then just Lando just reminding him, like, I'm going to be in my ship, in my quarters, waiting for my share. Like, and then just, we're not going to hang out ever again. He's like, just puts his finger up, like, I've had enough. I've had enough. I just thought that was so good. And then well, I mean, I'm jumping ahead, and then he just takes off like a complete jerk.
Yeah. I like that it's played so seriously. Like he's not joking here. He really is. He was really mad right now.
Right. Yeah. And Han's just like, I'm gonna bust his chops right now.
Yeah, which takes a lot of confidence to do that, but it's Han, so.
Oh, and he's coming off the high of his life. He flew the Millennium Falcon. He just does the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. You know, not if you round down, buddy, that whole thing. And
Yeah.
You could tell, like, Han is in full swagger mode right now. It's like when a football player throws a Hail Mary touchdown, or someone hits a game-winning three-pointer, or a walk-off home run in baseball. He's just like, he's in full confidence, full swagger mode. Look what I just did. And then you look at Lando, and he's in the exact opposite mental state.
Mm-hmm. And he just lost his droid and everything.
Yeah.
So Han, freshly swaggered, Han in his full, Han riding his high of confidence. He doesn't even act like sad when Lando goes away. He's just like, okay. Mm-hmm. And he goes straight to find Qi'ra, naturally.
Yes.
And he maybe gets knocked down probably a notch during this conversation, but he tries.
Right.
And so I'll play a little bit of getting into that section, because that's when we do get music starting to come in. So he sees her in the tent, or in the bar.
Yes.
Water.
Where's your boss?
Don't worry, he'll be here.
Then what?
Well, you delivered, so you will get paid. You can buy that shit.
Han and Qi'ra's theme right here.
No, that's not.
Played on what I think is the French horn. Now the strings echo it.
Can't happen.
And this sort of like music underscores their entire conversation. Like it's pretty constant. So they do have their whole conversation has music underneath it.
Absolutely. And this Han and Qi'ra theme, you know, we hear it a few times throughout the movie. And then there's sort of a tragic spin on it towards the end when she leaves him, which is one of my favorite shots in the movie, that you'll talk with somebody else about, of course. So I don't want to talk about that, steal that thunder. But in talking, so when we were lucky enough to speak with John Powell, the composer.
I know. I've watched and listened to your interview. It was so good. I told Lacey, like, thank you for doing that interview. I got so much out of it, and I've quoted it many times on the show.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. He was really generous with his time, and he's very candid and forthright and humble at the same time. And a lot, I mean, he went deep too. He didn't keep everything on the surface. He didn't mind bringing up things that he knew that we wouldn't know. And I like that, because it taught us things and it taught our audience things for sure. But he had said, I had asked him about, Han and Qi'ra's theme, and to me, it sounded very Gone with the Wind. It sounded very Out of Africa, like Meryl Streep, and those grand love themes, those classic love themes with high, a lot of heavy strings and horns and that sort of thing. And he had kind of said that he was inspired by Spartacus, so that made sense. And what he calls the beautiful death of love, and the realization, and this is almost his words, the realization that it's full of so many highs and lows, and it's all a microcosm of love itself, and that we've all gone through it. So the story to him was a guy going through things in life that would make him stronger. And he says, I probably subconsciously stole some things from John Williams, without question. Some things I tried to weave in deliberately. I'm sure part in his mind, he didn't say this, but he wanted to make sure he didn't trample on the Han and Leia theme. So he tried to make something that was unique to Han and Qi'ra, that when you hear it, it's for them.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, like, nobody composes music. You just process everything you've ever heard, and it comes out in a new way. So in knowing the very familiar, very legendary Han and Leia love theme, I'm sure the spirit of that came through, and he was able to create this off of that, and other things like you were saying, Spartacus, and just the idea that everyone can relate to the death of love, and that we all love the idea of love so much because it hurts and it makes us human. And everything he was saying about it was just like hitting me right in the chest, because I'm like, I'm so glad that he put that in there, because I think one of the biggest failures for Solo was that they didn't market the love story aspect of it, because it is here. It's very heavy, and I think it's a very underrated part of this movie, and it's one of the better, in my opinion, love stories in Star Wars, even though it ends in a sort of painful way for Han at the end of the movie. But the music that they use for Han and Qi'ra when they're in the Cape Closet, when he first sees her again on Dryden Voss's lounge, it's so beautiful. It's so good.
I'm so glad that you said that, because, well, first of all, his theme does follow. It very much is in a long lineage of love themes, like classic love themes. A lot of it harkens back to Han and Leia for sure, and just even Leia's theme, in the chord progressions and just the orchestration and everything. So it feels very in line with that. I also think, and the guest Crystal, Beth, and I talked about it when it was the Cape Closet scene, how, in my opinion, I think the theme is bigger than it is given credit for in the movie, and like you said, in the marketing of it. Like, feels to me like the theme is so earnest and so beautiful, and so like,
I agree.
And like that, I feel like if you listen to the cue that occurs while they're in the Cape Closet on the soundtrack, it goes longer than it goes in the scene, and so it kind of cuts off the way that it develops and everything, and so it almost makes me wonder if the love part was maybe de-emphasized at some point, because it's certainly, I don't know for sure, but it's certainly written like full out, but the way that it is sometimes edited into scenes makes it seem more comical or more of an afterthought than I think it was trying to be, because it's a very like grandiose theme.
It is, yeah.
Feel free to disagree.
And I'm not sure, because there are certain things like the Cape Closet thing, like George Lucas, came in and actually directed a shot in that scene where Han takes the hanger and he just hangs it up and misses the thing and doesn't care. He takes it from her, and that was George Lucas's idea. So that was the last thing he ever directed in Star Wars, was in this movie. So
did he direct the part where Beckett interrupts them?
No, but that's very C-3PO. If
that's so true.
People recall. Yeah, Empire Strikes Back. I see it as, I think, well, first of all, I don't want to get too down this rabbit hole, but I think a lot of people would agree, and even Bob Iger himself admitted that they sort of messed up in how they marketed this movie, and the calendar and all that stuff. And I think they were more worried about hiding Alden in the marketing for this because they were worried about people not wanting to receive a non-Harrison Ford Han Solo. So the trailers were a little odd to me.
The trailers were
they
odd.
were dark, like, you know,
They were scored
the
with
trailers
like
did not.
They were scored with like rock music
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yes, and they didn't capture what we ended up getting for the movie. So it was almost like they were shooting themselves in the foot with the marketing. If they had kept the spirit of the movie in the trailers, I think it would have done better. And I just think the Han and Qi'ra thing, like his whole obsession, that whole movie, all of his inspirations were about getting his ship so that he and her could go be free and go do whatever they wanted across the galaxy. The ultimate love story, fly out into the sunset or into the star set, whatever you want to call it. That was like, if you look at everything he did in that movie, he was going on the heist to get the money to get his ship to go back to Corellia. I want to go back to Corellia. It's about a girl, I can tell, you know, all this stuff. And then he finally sees her, and he gets tangled up in all the stuff with Crimson Dawn, and the universe in Star Wars is quite small. So of course he runs into her in this giant galaxy in this bar, and I love that about Star Wars. But everything about this movie, you know, people point out the boxes that you check off about how Han became Han and stuff, and that is true. But this movie, it really is deeply rooted in this guy's love for this girl, and then at the end, of course, she winds up burning him, and that's a part of what forms him into the guy we meet in Mos Eisley, who doesn't care about anybody but himself because he's jaded.
I appreciate that framing because now that you say it like that, I think you're right. I think it is easy to, I guess it's just even just myself looking at it from another angle, it makes me see it in a new way. Yeah, she really is like the thread that holds this whole story together, and I wonder if it was de-emphasized or if people have more trouble integrating it just because of, we know he ends up with Leia.
Right, that's fair.
And so it's sort of like I don't know. It is like one layer of, okay, for me, like watching the movie, because we know that he ends up with Leia, it immediately made me know, like, okay, so this love story is not going to pan out. So I think emotionally, I wasn't like letting myself get invested in Qi'ra to begin with, because I knew she wasn't going to last.
Sure. And that's fair. That's fair. Sometimes, but you know those movies where they'll show you the last scene first, and then they'll be like, let's see how we got here. And then they tell the rest of the story. That's sort of like, or Titanic, right? Like you watch that movie and you know, like something bad is going to happen because it, you know, history, but you still watch it. And I'm not saying this is Titanic, but, you know, but even though we know the ending, it almost makes it more heartbreaking because you're like, you see this guy with his puppy dog eyes, and throughout the movie, she's trying to warn him and tell him about, like, look, I'm trapped here. I'm stuck here. I didn't get out. And he's just like, I love you. I love you. I love you. You're so pretty. I love you. I love you. I love you. He's ignoring all the warning signs she's giving. She's like, you idiot. I'm trying to tell you right now. I'm in a different place and I can't get out of here. And he's just like, we'll figure it out. You and I will get a ship. We'll go. He's optimistic, but also just like blinded by like everything he's been focused on. He's like, has that narrow tunnel vision, which Han Solo often does. You know, I don't ask myself these questions until I've already done it, you know, that sort of thing. So it's very Han Solo. And, you know, Lawrence Kasdan knows how to write Han Solo better than anybody. And he co-wrote this movie with his son. So I liked seeing their approach to a young Han Solo who may be more optimistic than an older Han Solo, but still has that sort of, you know, tunnel vision and focus. Like, whatever I'm doing is what I'm doing, and this is the way. And, you know, whatever you're saying, I'm not hearing it. Like, it's very tragic in that way because, like you say, like maybe we don't vest as much knowing there's no happily ever after for Qi'ra and Han, but it almost makes it more tragic, and seeing the chase that he goes on to try to get her back or save her and stuff like that, knowing that it isn't going to end well. And you're like, oh man, Han is going to get hurt here. I wish we could just tell him now, but we can't. He has to find out for himself.
Well, throughout this film, we see him have such a lucky streak. Like, he's constantly like, no, we're going to make it. And somehow, like, against the odds, he is able to, like, do everything that gets him to this point. Like,
Never tell me the odds. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So he has this massive lucky streak, and he's used to it somehow working. And I think his personality and just his confidence and just kind of almost naive trust in that things will work out is sort of alluring to people. And the gang embraces him, Chewie embraces him. Somehow these things work, even though he's not always like the smartest person in the room, the most experienced person in the room. He has the personality that makes him, I don't know, it makes I don't know, just one of those people. Like he's one of those people. And this movie, or at least Qi'ra, this is the first time it's sort of him. He's seeing like his luck has run. It's the first time his luck like doesn't work. And so,
right. Yeah. That's a great point. He's probably thinking like, wait a minute, like what's going on here? Like Lando just ditched me. Beckett screwed me over, and now Qi'ra screwed me over. Like, what just happened to me?
Yeah.
Crazy.
And here in this conversation, he's like also just, he doesn't know how it's going to work, but he knows it's going to work. I'm not afraid of Crimson Dawn. I can take care of myself. I'm not the kid you knew on Corellia anymore.
Yeah, and I do love when she says, I may be the only person in the galaxy who knows what you are. And she says, the good guy. And she grabs him like by the side. And he's like, scoffs at that and says, no, he goes, I'm a terrible person. He just goes for it.
Yeah, let's listen to a bit of that, because as he says, or as she says, you're the good guy, we get well, first of all, going back when he says, I'm not afraid of Crimson Dawn, I can take care of myself. We do hear a hint of the Secrets theme. The Crimson, or are you well, let's hear it actually.
Yeah.
Everyone serves somebody, Han. Even Dryden Voss.
So we have this little.
But you don't want to make an enemy of Crimson Dawn,
Here we
which
go.
is exactly what you and I would both be doing if I left here with you.
I'm not afraid of Crimson Dawn. I can take care of myself. I'm not the kid you knew.
And then
on
it kind of
Corellia anymore,
dissipates.
Qi'ra.
No?
We only hear a
No.
hint of
Right.
it.
Who are you?
And now back to the Han and Qi'ra love theme, and so the Crimson Dawn doesn't like really rain on their parade at this point. It just kind of comes in as a hint that, Han doesn't really want to listen to. It goes in one ear and out the other, really.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I like those little drop-ins. And there's one in like the next 5 minutes you'll do.
Oh yeah.
That's a drop-in.
Big one. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So you know what it is. I'm not going to spoil it then. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So great job. Like John Powell he did a great job of sort of dunking these things in and weaving stuff in that are either, new for this movie, like the Crimson Dawn theme, or older, Star Wars classics, like when she hands him the dice on Kessel.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear the main theme very quickly and sweetly, know. So he did such a great job at that.
That part is, it's like, sounds like it's on a toy box or like a toy piano or something very twinkly. With the sort of Jaws thing going underneath.
Yeah. I'm doing Jaws on my movie podcast on Tuesday, and
funny.
I'm so excited to talk about that because I'm definitely going to talk about the music quite a bit. I feel like
John Williams, yes.
That's like one of the movies that the score took that movie to heights that Spielberg probably did not expect it to reach.
Yeah, that score changed the world. Changed the filmmaking world, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, so now when we get into the part where Qi'ra says, you are the good guy, the music kind of slows. It does like a little bit of a slowdown there. And then after Han says, I'm a terrible person, I noticed that the music ends on a hopeful note. It's like, I'm a terrible person, but the music's not really co-signing what he's saying. The music is kind of saying otherwise. So let's listen to that, and you can tell me if you are hearing the same thing.
Who knows what you really are?
Yeah. What's that?
You are the good guy.
I am not the good guy. I am definitely not the good guy. I'm a terrible person.
Hey! You say when the
Yeah, it doesn't match.
It's so subtle, but it's like, and on this like
Yeah,
beautiful
right.
chord.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that is not so. Like if you saw a terrible person outlaw walking around the corner of a street, you're not going to hear that as their theme music.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with you.
The music
Yeah.
doesn't lie.
Nope.
No. The music tells us what's really happening. Even when
tells us here's the deal.
Yeah. So Beckett once again interrupts their conversation.
I know. What is his deal? Like his girl blows herself up, and he's like, no one else gets romance.
No one
Nobody.
And so he says that, hey, they say when the coaxiums are fine, we collect it up here. And so he wants to, he's sticking to the plan. He wants to continue what they're doing. And at this point, we have, we start, we see the views of the village. So we're walking through this kind of really ragged, village that doesn't have much in it. There's creaky structures. There are people sitting around looking very neutral. I mean, it doesn't look like a vibrant, it looks like a pretty lonely city.
Yeah.
And the sound design, once again, is emphasized here. And it's sort of a new type of palette. It's similar to what we had at the beginning of these minutes with we hear the squeaky, we hear the like wind with weather vanes or whatnot rotating around, those propellers, those fins that are on it,
Right.
whatever. And we also hear the villagers like clothes flapping.
Right.
But let's take a little bit of a listen.
Axioms are fine, we collect it up there.
So, walking through the village, the squeaky, hearing all the flapping fabric.
Yeah, there's just nothing. There's nothing warm about like rusted copper metal squeaking.
It really does sound rusted.
Yeah, this is a very like eroded, worn, torn, cold place.
Eroded for sure, and worn. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are good descriptors. So here, unlike the beginning, which was just the sound, it's almost like now that this world has been established, we have also the sound, but a little bit of music as well. But the music is such that it's really it sounds to me like it's emphasizing the squeakiness. It's not really trying to tell much more. It's a musical representation of that. So we hear that, that instrument that to me sounds like a bowed vibraphone, if you're familiar with that. You look like you're going to say something.
No, I'm trying to think of the instrument because that rung a bell, but I can't place it. I'll have to Google it.
So I'll play a little bit of a clip of what a bowed vibraphone sounds like. So this is from I found a YouTube video called Vibraphone and Bow, Audio Loop and Resonance of Vibraphone. Channel is called Plastic Clova, and I'll put a link in the show notes. So thank you for this little excerpt of the vibraphone so that people can hear what a bowed vibraphone sounds like. So a vibraphone, it's a mallet instrument. It kind of looks like a xylophone or a marimba. And usually you hit it and you hear like a percussive sound. But when you take a bow, like literally a bow, like the kind you would use on a violin or viola or cello, and you just like bow the metal, it sounds like, and I'm about to play it, and here we go, like this.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's kind of glassy, really thin sounding.
Yeah, like when people do their finger around the edge of a water glass.
Yeah, it also
Yes.
sounds kind of like a glass harmonica. And, I don't know for sure that it was bowed vibraphone. Like they could have done something that sounds similar to it, but that sound evokes, it kind of magnifies the squeakiness of Savareen. Like it really feels like
Yeah.
it fits
Oh,
the
yeah.
location.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a little haunting.
yeah, it is. It is. And the hollowness of the sound, which is also not warm, like there's no vibration to it, there's no vibrato to it. It's just
Right.
it's a hollow sound, like glassy.
Yeah, like this scene, like every aspect of this scene in terms of the environment and the sounds, like not necessarily the character interactions almost counteract it in a way, but with the humor and the romance and all that stuff. But it makes me want like a blanket and a hot cup of soup or something. Like I need to be comforted because like I want to get indoors and like get cozy because I don't like what's going on in the environment of this planet right now.
I totally get that. And like even the conversation, all the conversations we've had so far have been like kind of on thin ice in some way, like sort of a little bit, not everything is good, basically.
Right.
And it kind of, it builds the tension and we're going to get a payoff pretty soon.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the cue so we can hear what I think is a bowed vibraphone in the context of the sound design, and they work very well together.
There it is.
That does sound
Yeah.
a lot like that. I think you nailed it.
It's just this beautiful soundscape of the squeaking, the flapping, the music,
So I hear you make good brandy.
Chewie's little howls. And it leaves just enough space to hear Enfys Nest through the mask. I'm going to stop right there because we're starting to feel it before we are going to see them. We're feeling the Cloud Riders
Yes.
through the rumble that is, just starting.
And the bartender like gives a zero reaction to Beckett. And Beckett's like, what's this guy's deal? Because he could see everyone already back there.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows like, I don't know who these people are, but they look like trouble. I don't care if you want to drink right now. And Beckett's like, what's the deal? I just want to get a drink from this guy. And the classic, turn around in a Western, like, oh no.
And then we get a
Oh,
close-up
no.
shot of all of them turning around. Like each of them gets a close-up of them turning around.
Right. And they're all really nice shots. Like everyone looks like right in the pocket. I love it.
Yeah, everyone's little hero shot there.
Right. Yeah. Slight wind blowing the hair.
Mm-hmm. And I'll pick up where we left off. So we have Enfys Nest theme, and we
What
see
a
this
track.
we see this huge shot, massive shot of all the Cloud Riders,
Yeah.
and all of them are fit in frame. So it's a
Yep.
pretty, like in fact, the shot it's like diagonal to fit them all in.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And I know, there's a lot of slopes and stuff in the Savareen scene. There's not a lot of level ground. And I mean, there's a lot to get into in this. Like, I know a lot of people, including myself, when we first heard the Cloud Rider theme, like, wow, this is definitely different. This is standing out quite a bit. And I guess it is a bit of foreshadowing because then once you find out who Enfys Nest is, is a young woman. You're not expecting that with a distorted voice and this like real violent attitude and what have you. And
And all of the hearsay about them.
right, that they're savages and pirates and all this stuff. And then she takes the mask off, and it's this young woman. And then when you listen back to the theme, it sounds like chanting, young women chanting. So it's almost like they were like letting you know, like this is who she is. Don't judge a book by its cover, so to speak. And the theme, one other thing from our conversation with John Powell, he had said in creating this theme for the Cloud Riders and Enfys Nest was his version of Duel of the Fates.
Yeah.
So the fact that I know a lot of people would say, just from hearing vocalized chants, that that's sort of like Duel of the Fates, but he told us that he was doing sort of his version of that, and so he was heavily inspired by Duel of the Fates when creating that, and that's what led to him including the vocalizations, which make it such a very mysterious and cool sounding. I don't know, like I almost want to say like Egyptian sounding. I'm not even sure. But it's just a very unique and cool sounding track that is not probably standard. Like if you think of Star Wars music, it's not what you're used to, but it fits perfectly with this group, the Cloud Riders.
At this point, they're so tied together for me that it's hard to imagine them without it. But this particular sound, it's a Bulgarian choir. And the singing is in the Bulgarian folk style, and that is evoked quite a bit in films, not in a Star Wars film, though it was in a Star Wars vision in the first one, The Duel. I don't know if you remember, like when Lucy Liu's character, it comes out. Anyway. I can't remember her name, but the one, the main antagonist in that vision.
In which?
In Star Wars, in Duel, in Star Wars Visions Episode 1.
Oh yes, yeah. You're right. Oh yeah, that's good call, good pull. Yeah, wow, I didn't even think about that.
And there's a long and storied history of the use of Bulgarian, especially choirs, used in Western contexts to evoke a sense of something exotic and foreign. So it is kind of controversial, but not to many people. It's controversial to the people who care about it, but not a lot of people know about even know about the context. Like, and so to most people, it's just something that sounds cool and powerful. But there is a whole, so I like it too, while also being aware of how it plays in a tradition, in a Bulgarian context, and knowing what it symbolizes here as not being the same as what it symbolizes there.
That's interesting, because the owner of our site, StarWarsNewsNet.com, is from Bulgaria. He lives there.
Oh,
he's from there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'll have to ask him if he knew that, because I'll bet he didn't know that, but maybe he did and just hasn't talked about it. But yeah, I got to pick his ear about that now. That's very, very interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't know that. That's I'm glad that's a part of why I wanted to come on here, because Lacey was like, "Oh my God, Xanthe knows, like, she talks about deep theory and she knows the history of all these, how these things were inspired and stuff." I'm like, I better do some Googling before I hop on here so I don't look like a complete clown. But no, that's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah.
So I definitely would. I think I will do some. I keep saying I want to do some very deep dive into Bulgarian music, maybe as a bonus episode after the season or something. I'm trying to find the right guest for it, and it has to be someone who's a Bulgarian music scholar. I think it has to be.
Okay.
So because there's some specifics to talk about with regard to the vocal technique, which is also very different from what we're used to here in a Western context. It's a very it's a vocal technique that is. A lot of people think it sounds like yelling or like really forceful or something, and the tones are being produced from a different place than we're used to. So there's a lot to go into there. And it definitely sounds really different in the context of Star Wars because that style of music and of singing has not been used in Star Wars. Like in Duel of the Fates, that's definitely not used. It's just the inspiration isn't necessarily, it wasn't like Duel of the Fates was Bulgarian choir, so I'm going to do Bulgarian choir. It was more like John Powell's inspiration was more of a, broadly speaking, powerful vocal, chanting type thing, and something very different, but just inspired by that effect.
Yeah. And it's a cool, I mean, what a cool way to, introduce yourself. Everyone always thinks about like, what would my like intro music be if I was this or something? And like, that's a pretty good one. Like if you compare it to a lot of other, intros. I mean, imagine like just rolling up with your gang and that plays, you're like, you guys are all in trouble right now. Well, little do you know you're not, but if you encounter somebody who Enfys Nest needs to steal from to help this rebellion, you guys are toast.
It is very evocative. And even before we hear that theme, it's just that rumble of the drums that just like you're... Is
that timpani? What is that?
I don't know for sure. It kind of sounds timpani-like, but it also sounds like there might be some sort of a synth tone or like a bass sustain tone or something underneath, because it also sounds very like there's something about it that feels blurry, but like subtly.
Maybe he layered it with like synth, but also organic instruments or something. Yeah.
And the way it grows is really like thunder, or like, I mean, we feel that growing before we see the shot of them. So it really is like they're felt before they are seen.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's quite an evocative build up.
And it's this movie, it has, it's a heist movie, but it also has a lot of classic Western stuff in it. And one of my favorite shots in the movie is in this 5 minutes, and it's when it's the hip shot from Han's holster, and he unbuckles his holster, and it's just a classic Western shot of the adversary in the distance, a little out of focus, and that side view of the gunslinger's holster. And I love that they included it in this movie, in this moment, because Han's ready to go before even understanding who this person is. And good thing he didn't,
Mm-hmm.
Because she's about to quite literally get involved in the start of the rebellion.
Yeah.
So it's I just love those old Western shots, because my dad, I didn't like Westerns when I was a kid. I thought they were boring, but I've grown to appreciate them and like them a lot more as I'm getting older. And my dad used to watch them all the time. He watched them with him, like Clint Eastwood and stuff like that. So I remember a lot of them. And when I see a shot that's similar to something that they did back then, I'm like, wow, that's a throwback to, Fistful of Dollars or Good, Bad, and the Ugly or something like that. And seeing these filmmakers make those nods, because Star Wars, people call Star Wars science fiction. I don't, and George Lucas
totally
never really did
disagree.
either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he calls it a soap opera. He calls it a family soap opera, or a space fantasy, or whatever. And it really is. It's a Western adventure, swashbuckling fantasy, and that happens to take place in space, and it has spaceships that go fast because George Lucas liked fast cars. That's really all it was. So
that behind the legs shot, I feel we also got it earlier in the movie, didn't we? When he is...
Oh, yes. Yeah, when he's at the person the card table.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your solo.
Oh, yeah, so good. I do know. I know my solo. Yeah, absolutely. I honestly may have to watch it late tonight after the family goes to bed. I'm always the last one up in my house, so I get the pick of the litter on what I get to watch at the very end of the night. So I may throw it on at you. This has been such a fun conversation so far, which we still got ways to go, but I may watch it again and put this analytical eye to the other 120 minutes or whatever.
It's always really fun to do that. That's why I think like all Star Wars films have endless rewatchability, because in between watches, definitely, chances are I've learned something about it since the last watch.
Right. And there's sometimes like I was watching, and if I'm getting too off topic, just reel me in, Xanthe. Just be like, get back here.
All right, I will, but this is relevant.
I was watching Return of the Jedi a few months ago, and I know this was an add-on for the special edition, but all of a sudden I'm watching, and right before Luke shows up down the stairs at Jabba's palace, a Dug walks down the stairs, like that's one of Sebulba's species, and I'm like, I've never seen that before. Or like there's a Jawa standing behind Jabba fanning him to cool him down. I'm like, I've never realized that. And like, I've learned to, now that I've watched Star Wars so many times, and I think this is effective, and to bring myself to my point, is in these like 5-minute things that you do, which is awesome, is I like to now, when I rewatch Star Wars movies, don't always go where my eye wants to go. I'm like, look over here this time, you know? And you'll find something, even though you've seen this movie 40 times or 400 times, you'll be like, I have never knew that droid was there, or that person looked at that person that way or something. And it's almost like you're cheating yourself, but you're like watching the movie again for the first time in a lot of ways.
That's a technique that I employ myself as well. Like, look,
nice.
don't look where my instinct is. Like, look somewhere else.
Exactly. Yes.
I do like
awesome.
when I used to, before the pandemic, when I used to go to Disneyland a lot and had a pass back then. I would go there a lot and go on the same, you go on the same rides, like know them really, really well. And, I would go with, friends sometimes, and who have also gone on the rides many, many times. And like, I would always play this game that I would rope other people into, which was, we'll go on the ride. At the end of the ride, we'll tell each other 5 things about it that we noticed that we have never noticed before.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so throughout the
That's
ride,
great.
you're just like looking like behind things. You're like, just trying to, notice some new aspect of it. And if you, it's not very hard to question yourself while you're doing that. Like, wait, have I noticed that before? I think I've noticed it before, but somehow it wasn't committed to enough to memory for me to know whether I have noticed it before. So that in itself is like, it's almost like a re-noticing, and it's, it's amazing how much you can get out of things that you think you know already.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you do that, because I mean, sometimes when I'm on a ride, I do try to absorb as much as I can just so that I remember the experience. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm going to do that next time I go to like anywhere that I've been before and have ridden, like, whether it's, Pirates of the Caribbean or
oh
whatever.
my gosh, that ride is so long that one is like,
yeah,
I'll never know everything in that ride. Never.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
so much.
That's a good technique I'm going to employ beyond just watching movies then. So thank you.
Yeah. Hope it goes well. An addendum to that game, by the way, is try to notice where the speakers are, like where the sound is coming from, because it's really interesting and very impressive, the different sound sources that are on a ride, like at Disneyland or something. And there will be speakers coming from the environment or from the animatronics. Sometimes there's also an onboard speaker in your vehicle, and so you're getting different layers of a soundscape. It's not just like there's a loudspeaker playing in the room that the ride is, and that's the sound of the ride. No, there's more ambient stuff coming from places. There's tiny little sprinklings coming from specific places, and then there's maybe narration that's closer to your ear. So there is like all
they'll
these
do
ways of
panning
prioritizing.
too.
Panning, oh, that's definitely big. On It's a Small World, I've definitely noticed sometimes, like last time I was there, I noticed like harmony, like melodies on one side, like sort of counterpoint on another side at some point. Like melodies always on one side. Or like, I don't know. It was just, wow. Yeah, there's so much to notice.
There is. I love it.
So Han touches the pistol in his leg holder, and Beckett's like, don't. Always sort of tempering Han.
Right.
And then, of course, the masked voice says, "You must have known you'd see me again." And like I said before, we do have that diagonal shot of the Cloud Riders. And now the terrain is in itself not level, as you said. But if I recall correctly, it's not that they're just standing on a diagonal. It's like the shot is diagonal. Like,
I think you're right. Yeah.
And it kind of makes them not only fill the frame from left to right, but it kind of sets them up as being off kilter, of being like just something unusual, being, yeah.
Yeah, I forget, someone had told me this a while ago about, because I used to watch when I was a kid. I used to watch the reruns of the classic Batman TV series with like Adam West. I don't know if you've ever watched that show,
I haven't,
but
but I've heard about it and I've heard that the music is very good.
yeah, the music is good. It's obviously hokey. It does that like bop pow zam when they're punching people and stuff. It's very comic booky, like, where kids can watch it. But they do a lot of diagonal angles in that show too. And I know there's a technique that I forget what it's, Dutch angles, I think it's called.
Oh,
Yeah, and I don't know what the purpose of it is. If it's just to alter. I wish I had known that. But I don't know if it's like to alter how our perception is or something like that, or upset the x-axis or whatever. But I know it's like to purposely disorient you or something like that. It might be the intention.
well, it's effective. I mean, it certainly looks cool too. I didn't know about that term,
Yeah.
so I will look it up later, and I'll put a link to the definition or something in the show notes so people can check that out. So it does that here, and then the music, which is still playing out. Well, okay, when Enfys Nest masked says that, the music ducks. So let's listen to that.
Don't.
Oh wait, I'll go a little bit so you can hear the lead up. So the music is the most important thing here. It's loud,
Yeah.
Don't.
and then it's
Don't.
still,
Must have known you'd see me again.
Was counting on it.
and there we
Didn't
go.
plan on it being so soon.
The music is still there, but it's leaving
Now
space
you've
for
got
the
a problem.
dialogue.
Big problem.
Big problem. Han, oh my, always just like think like the seat of his pants. He has no idea what he's like saying. He's just making things up right now. See that ship down there? It's got 30 hired guns. Nope, it's Lando leaving. Oh
Truly,
my god,
his
that was
lines
one
in
of the funniest
this-
moments.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I laughed so hard when that ship takes off. I thought that was so
John.
funny.
It
Oh man.
his lines are almost it's like when he's flying by the seat of his pants, his lines come out like he's a 10-year-old. He's like, I'm a terrible person. Big trouble. Like big problem.
Yeah, my son, he's 3, and he'll just say these outlandish things. Like he'll do something, and I'll get in trouble, and he'll be like, "Do you hate me? Do you hate me?" I'm like, "No, wait, not, it's crazy. It's just mouth, like verbal mouth vomit, or yeah, verbal vomit, whatever you want to call it. It's just so. Yeah, Han just. It's almost like in The Office when Michael Scott says, "Sometimes I start a sentence and I don't know where it's going, so I just keep talking until I can find it." So it's just Han is just like he was about to fire his gun. He's the same way with his mouth. He just fires off. Shoot first, ask later,
Mhm.
verbally and physically.
Yeah, basically. Though I feel like here he still leaves enough time. Like by the time we get to A New Hope, he's more instantaneous. Like we wouldn't get that shot of him just touching the pistol. Like it would be more like he would just be doing it. Here he does it, but it's slow enough that there's still time for people to stop him. He kind of
Right.
wants
right.
wants the seal of approval first before he does it still, in a way.
Right. And in A New Hope, he does the unbuckle, but it's under the table and no one is there. No one's watching him. He knows it's just him,
Mhm.
But here, you're right. He has a support system where he probably feels a little more confident. So I think that's a good point there. You made a good point.
And so when the music gets softer there, that is not only are the voices removed and like orchestrationally, it is sparser there, so to leave room for the vocals. But also, I believe in the mix. The mix is really turning the music down there so that it's still underneath the surface, but that you can still hear the dialogue. And that is called ducking. When you lower the volume of one sound, one audio signal, you lower it so that another one can be in the forefront. And it's usually used when background music needs to get out of the way for dialogue, or for
Oh, cool. Yeah, I noticed that in movies when they go to like bars or like dance clubs, and like the intro is like this big booming thing, and then once people start talking, it's like someone hit the, volume on the remote or something, That's cool.
and it's
That's cool.
something that I'm sure you do without even noticing, like, on podcasts and everything, when the music starts at the beginning and then it kind of gets softer so that you can do your intro. That's
Yeah.
ducking.
Oh, yeah.
That's just ducking. Yeah.
Oh, I duck.
Yeah.
I duck. I didn't know it. All right. Cool.
Welcome to
All
the
right.
Duck Club. Yeah.
All right.
So that's the end of these minutes. It's a good set
All
of
right.
minutes.
That was really cool. That was cool. And now I got to go back and listen to your other solo episodes, and I got to rewatch it. This is such a cool thing. I'm so glad. I know we're not done. I know there's other things I have to do here, right? But
Yep.
that was really fun. That was really cool.
I'm glad. Before the Star Wars Music Minute Questionnaire, I just want to review a few of another like main point, and then just list off the themes that were in this set of minutes. So one thing that I noted in this 5 minutes was that each scene had a different like sound hierarchy. Like when we were DMing and you were like, there's not much music in this scene. And I was like, yeah, it's not a very musically loud scene, but there still is music, but it's just that the priority of the music is different from scene to scene. And so I think this is just like it tells how the story it tells how the setting is unfolding, like how we're discovering everything about Savareen, about the situation, the nature of these cloud riders, their relationships. So first, when we get on the beach, when we land on Savareen, there is no music. It's just the sounds of the place, as we were talking about. And then when we move into the bar that's in the tent with Han and Qi'ra, music, there is romantic underscore setting the mood of the conversation, but the dialogue is in the forefront. And then also behind the music, we are also still hearing, just, keeping with the realism of the scene, we do still hear the ambiance of Savareen as well. We still hear the flapping and we still hear wind and stuff, but it's just it's not the main thing like we hear in the first shots. And then walking through the village, there is no dialogue, but we are hearing the sound environment and the music that is really supporting the sound environment. They're kind of like working together to, emphasize the squeakiness of this village. And then, of course, when the cloud ride, it saved all its juice to make for an impactful moment where we see where the cloud riders are revealed. And, that was with the drum lead up and the whole crescendo, and then just their theme out in the open for several bars, the loudest thing, no dialogue it's making room for. It's just that, epic shot of them. And then once that music has been established, it ducks for the vocals. And so that is this 5 minutes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Yeah. So the themes in the set of minutes are the main theme, the main Star Wars theme, A section, young Han Solo, the searching variant, and the Rebel fanfare. That's at the very beginning when they're making their landing. And then Han and Qi'ra, Secrets, and Enfys Nest 1. In the soundtrack, we are at the end of Into the Maw and Kessel Run in Less Than 12 Parsecs on different soundtracks. And we hear the full track of Savareen Tent, 6M34 on the deluxe version. And then we also get into the beginning of Enfys Standoff, 6M35, which is the same thing as Savareen Standoff. Just, the two versions of the soundtrack. Yeah. It's
Yeah, I have the I listened to the deluxe version on Spotify, but I also bought the limited Mondo vinyl of the solo. Yeah, the solo soundtrack. Just it has this cool cover that the sleeve is them really awesome artwork. Them in the cockpit when they see the monster and they're all like, ah. But the sleeve that goes over it is the frame of the outside of the cockpit. So when you take it off, you're inside the cockpit.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Each disc, each of the disc, I say, each of the albums, the vinyls, has different artwork on it too. One is, I believe, like the stars of hyperspace, and it's just it was a cool thing that Mondo did, and I had to pick it up, and I bought a record player for that. I didn't have a record player since I was at my parents' house when I was a kid, but it was such a cool thing. Like this soundtrack, like John Powell did such a good job doing this movie.
Do you have any other vinyls now?
I don't have any others yet, but
It's a record player just for solo.
Some.
That's hilarious.
Just for solo right now. I have a solo vinyl, yeah, literally.
Oh, that's funny. You reminded me. I forgot to put up the. I'm going to put up the frames, a little summary of the frames that we go through in this set of minutes. So on the left, if you're watching on YouTube, there's kind of an image of exiting the Ma situation, and then we see Han and Lando. Han has his arm around Lando, and then we see the they are diagonal. That it is a diagonal shot. See, the Cloud Riders at a diagonal. Yep. Well, now we have to move on to the Star Wars Music Minute Questionnaire.
Oh boy,
are you ready?
I think I am ready. I think I
All
prepared enough. We'll see
right.
if my answers are satisfactory enough for you.
Question number 1. In exactly 3 words, what does Star Wars sound like?
I put a lot of thought into this, and I came up with endlessly imaginative adventure.
I like it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. Question number 2. What is something related to Star Wars music or sound that you are curious about and want to learn more?
So I found myself looking towards the unknown, which is the future of Star Wars music, because I feel like there's so many great books, documentaries, and resources and interviews where you can really enrich yourself in learning how the sounds were created. Like you brought up Ben Burt before, and the music with John Williams and that. So I want to learn more about the future. Like, will they find the next John Williams, whoever that person is, to be the new composer? Because he was the only person for 42 years, besides, the spin-off movies. But are they going to have one person, or is it going to be one of those like what they've been doing, which is, Natalie Holt does Obi-Wan, Ludwig does Mando, this person's going to do this movie, this person's going to do this. So I'm curious. I want to learn what their aim is for Star Wars music in the future, because as George Lucas said, he thought, and I think Steven Spielberg too, that the movie was not going to be a success until they heard it with the music. So it is a very, very important part of Star Wars, and the greatest composer of all time is retiring
from film music,
which I got to see him conduct live at Star Wars Celebration, and that blew my mind. You were there?
Yep.
Oh, were you in the room?
Yep.
So we were in the same place and we didn't even know it.
There were a lot of people in that room.
My eyes, I couldn't believe what was happening. I still can't believe that happened.
I can't believe they got him to go to Star Wars Celebration. I was just amazed.
And then I brought this up on our podcast, the fact that he had to sort of be helped onto his platform, but then once he got going, all of his ailments or age vanished. It was incredible.
Yeah.
So I want to know what the future is for Star Wars music. I think that's going to be very important.
Agreed. That is also something I am very curious about too. What is it? We'll watching that with great interest.
Yes, well done. Nice.
So the final question is, what is a score or soundtrack that you're fond of besides anything Star Wars?
I mean, John Williams, anything. I love all of his soundtracks. It was so funny. There were a few years ago, I was watching Catch Me If You Can. I was like, oh my God, the music of this movie is so charming. I'm like, who did it? I'm like, John Williams did that too? I'm like, this guy's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Because it doesn't even sound like a classic John Williams. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes when you hear John Williams, you're like, that's John Williams. With that, I didn't know. And then I looked it up. I'm like, of course it's him, because it's freaking amazing. So anything John Williams. But I will say I also love let's see, for like a classic score, I'll say like someone like Bernard Herrmann from Psycho. I think is a very important movie score that influenced even John Williams for certain string things he involved in the first Star Wars movie. I think he admitted that. When they're
from Vertigo,
hiding,
something Vertigo was.
Maybe it was Vertigo. When they're hiding themselves in the Falcon, and it's that very doom and gloom sound. And then for modern stuff, I love Michael Giacchino. I think he's fantastic. I think he made a great Batman theme for a character that's had a lot of already great themes made for him. And then also Hans Zimmer, who almost did Solo, by the way.
I know.
Ron Howard. You know that. Okay. Yeah.
Because I watched your interview. Plus he said that
oh,
a
right.
few times.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That was the first. But
So
the
I just
first
said
time
a
I
lot,
heard it was
but-
on your. But the first time I heard it was on your interview. I learned it from your
Oh,
interview.
cool. Yeah, it was the first time I heard it too. It's cool. Yeah. I know I just said a lot, so I apologize.
No,
I broke
it's all
the
right.
rule, but
You said "Catch Me If You Can," Psycho, Batman, the new Batman you're talking about.
yes, and
And
I'll
do you have a favorite
say
Hans Zimmer?
this is going to be an unpopular pick, but Man of Steel.
Why is that an unpopular pick?
I think because
I haven't
it's
seen
not. It's not as popular of a movie, and Hans Zimmer has done so many classic scores that a lot of people wouldn't go to that. But and his Batman stuff is great too. But I love that movie, and I love the music from that movie so much.
Well, there it is. Not controversial to me.
Thank you, Xanthe.
Well, it's been so much fun talking to you. Can tell people
You
where they
too.
can find you and maybe a little bit about Make Solo 2 Happen. Lacey said a little bit, but say your piece too.
So yeah, the Make Solo 2 Happen thing actually started as a joke, tongue-in-cheek t-shirt idea I had. Because it was around August of September, the year Solo came out. It didn't do great at the box office, and I wanted to root for it because I liked it so much. So I was talking to James about it, and then I think Lacey even told me like that's a dumb idea or something like that. But she'll admit to that. But she redeemed herself later because she created the idea to do the Make Solo 2 Happen Day, which turned into a big deal online. So that was all her idea. But the shirt was a tongue-in-cheek thing. I just said I think it'd be so funny if we made a shirt that said Make Solo 2 Happen, because they're probably never going to do it. So we'd be the only ones rooting for that. And then I wore it to New York Comic Con, and everyone was coming up to me like high-fiving me, saying like yes, Solo, make it, blah blah. And then I'm like, something's going on here. So people started buying this shirt, and we're starting like see people at Star Wars events that are going to Galaxy's Edge wearing the shirt. I hadn't even been there. And then we go to Star Wars Celebration in 2019, and Brian Herring, who is a puppeteer for Star Wars, he does BB-8 and all that stuff. He asked us to take a picture with him on the show floor. Jonas Sotomo said
Chewie.
as a joke. Our friends Alex and Molly from Star Wars Explained gave him one of our shirts on our behalf, and he jokingly said, "My son's first words were Make Solo 2 Happen." So it's just it's become this big thing where all of Lucasfilm know about it, everyone knows about it, and it's just blown up. And it happened organically. It wasn't one of those like, you better do this or else. It was like, you probably had intentions to make a follow-up because of where the movie ends. They're going to Jabba's palace. They had signed him for 3 movies. We just are rooting for it to happen, and whether it's a TV show or not. So it's been a positive thing. There's no negativity behind it. It's gotten people together that embrace themselves over a Star Wars movie that people almost have to root for in a way, because it's like the bastard
underdog
of the Star Wars movies. Yeah, it's the underdog, right? So that's sort of how that all came about, just from a t-shirt idea, and it organically and innocently enough spurned into something wonderful with
That's
fans.
really
So
awesome.
we're proud of that. Yeah. So
As I told
it's been a lot of
Lacey,
fun. We'll see what they do.
I knew about Make Solo 2 Happen before I even knew who the people behind it were. I definitely
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
yeah.
Oh,
I
wow,
definitely
that's so
saw that
cool.
trending years ago. And yeah.
Yeah, it took off, and we
movement.
were surprised it did. Yeah, it's a movement. Yeah, and hopefully they do something, and maybe Disney Plus, who knows? But I
Would
would
you
love
prefer
to
a
see
movie
all
or a
those characters
Disney Plus
again.
series?
I think at this point Disney Plus would make more sense because I don't think they seem to be having a little bit of trouble on the movie side of things. All these movies are getting pushed aside and stuff like that, and the way it performed, it'd probably be hard pressed to get Disney to greenlight a big budget theatrical movie. I think a Disney Plus series would be fantastic of Han and Chewie working for Jabba, get Boba Fett in there, see what Qi'ra's doing, and this nest. Like, they could tell so many cool stories and give each person like an episode or two and really make it a fun continuation of the story, because everyone left off with, even though we know where Han and Chewie go 10 years from now, yeah, we just saw Obi-Wan, who's around the same time frame. Yeah, I think it'd be really cool to see more of that, and hopefully they do. So
I would definitely be down for that.
yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. And as far as other stuff, I am on Twitter at Johnny Hoey. I don't take Twitter very seriously, so if you're just looking for someone who tweets about, Yankees baseball, Star Wars, and that sort of stuff, give me a follow, I guess. The Resistance broadcast, we put out episodes every Monday and Thursday, unless there's an active Star Wars show on. Then we go live on Wednesday nights, and we have a Patreon with a bunch of bonus stuff, and I'm on there with James and Lacey, and the three of us have been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now. So every Monday and Thursday, and we're available on any podcast app or youtube.com/Star Wars Newsnet videos. And last but not least, speaking of which, I'm the senior writer and lead editor for StarWarsNewsNet.com, which is a fan-run site owned by Val, who's from Bulgaria. But we like to report on the news and avoid, clickbait and stuff. We like to make it a positive and honest and fun experience for fans to get Star Wars news from a fan perspective. So
that's awesome.
And I have me and my best friend during the pandemic to hang out more started a movie podcast, and my brother made me a mug of it. It's called Just Like the Movies, yeah, which is I took that line from an Alien Ant Farm song. But we just talk about old movies that we grew up with. For us is usually like, early 90s, late 80s, and that sort of stuff. And we're dipping into the 70s with Jaws on Tuesday. But just two best friends getting together to talk about movies just as an excuse to reconnect during the pandemic, and we've kept it going.
I love that. Where can people buy those Make Solo 2 Happen shirts if they're interested?
Yes, so store.resistancebroadcast.com.
Okay. I'll put links to these in my show notes.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, so those are available there, I believe, in different in hoodies and t-shirts and that sort of stuff. But
it looks like a nice quality t-shirt, I have to say.
It is. The red one is currently not available. It's one of those like rare ones that we pop out once in a while. But the classic charcoal with the yellow pops real nice. I wore it at Celebration, a fresh one, and it's just cool to wear because it's a conversation starter. People usually are pretty positive about it. So
that's awesome. Well, we'll be continuing the conversation next week here, talking about minutes 101 through 105. Thank you so much for listening. We only have maybe 5, 6, 7, less than 7 episodes left for this entire movie. So really wrapping it up here. You can find Star Wars Music Minute on YouTube or on all the podcasting platforms. And with that, may the Force be with you. And thanks for listening to Star Wars Music Minute.